Okay. This music resonates with the city's industrial history in all sorts of ways. It's the product of the Great Folk Migration, in which black Southerners came to Chicago during the early and mid-20th century, leaving agrarian work and rural lives and going north to become industrial urbanites. Compared to Delta blues and other down-home styles from which it evolved, Chicago blues sounds more urbanized and more industrialized. Industrialized in the sense that the beat has been routinized, the formula has been regularized, and the band sound has been not just electrified and amplified, but matched to the urban industrial soundscape. So if Delta blues guitar sounds like a train in the distance, Chicago blues guitar sounds like the L taking a corner right over your head. And the lyrics of 5 Long Years tells the story of industrial migration, right? Tells the story of industrial migration in miniature. So the singer tells us he got a job in a steel mill, dutifully bringing home his paycheck every Friday for 5 years, but his woman turned him out anyway. It's a song about heartbreak, and it's also a song about work. And the two subjects collapse together when his wife and his employer become one in the phrase, "I worked 5 long years for one woman." Right? And the whole labor history and social geography of black migration is compressed within one verbal gesture. I got a job in a steel mill trucking steel like a slave, right? Which panoramically embraces Southern slavery and the mills of the urban North. The connection to industrial work goes deeper still. It goes into the groove of the song. Eddie Boyd, who wrote the song, left the Delta during World War II and found work in a Chicago defense plant. He says he was inspired to compose 5 Long Years by the sound of the power brake machine that he operated in a steel mill. So the song not only tells a typical industrial migrant story, it has the rhythms of factory work built into its groove. An evocative example of adjusting to the urban soundscape as part of the larger adjustment to industrial city life. Now, let's plug that story into the model that I proposed. So Buddy Guy, a young musician who burned to explore the noise end of the guitar spectrum, right, came to Chicago from Louisiana in 1957 and entered a robust blues order, the industrial blues order, made primarily by and for black Southerners. There were styles for Guy to choose among and master. There were mentors like Muddy Waters and Eddie Boyd to emulate, and audiences to please. And that whole series of encounters was framed and shaped by institutions. The South Side and West Side club circuits, independent record labels like Chess and Cobra, and established bands like that of Muddy Waters who played a gatekeeping role for the scene. So Guy's semi-inchoate urge to wail on the guitar took on precise form as Chicago blues, as it was poured into a series of channels and containers available to a talented young musician in that moment. But when Buddy Guy played the song in the early 1990s in the clip, or when he plays it now at his extremely successful blues club in downtown Chicago, he's no longer telling this story to an audience of black migrants who know the truth of it from personal or family experience. Chicago has changed, and so has the blues. He now makes music in a post-industrial blues order, centered in clubs on the North Side and largely oriented toward the tourist trade. Chances are nobody in his audience today ever got a job at a steel mill, trucking steel like a slave. That's ancient history in Chicago at this point. And in fact, a great part of the appeal of the music now is that it evokes nostalgia for that ancient history. And the music has changed since the 50s too. Guy's guitar playing shows the influence of rock guitar, especially of rock stars like Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, all of whom were originally influenced by Guy and then came to influence him in return. And Guy's audience has changed. He's usually playing for white middle-class service workers and professionals, people who work in offices, not on blue-collar shop floors. This audience has been attracted to the music through listening to the rock guitar players who cite Guy's influence on them. And this audience's rock-trained aesthetic preferences encourage Guy to depart from the orthodox blues style of the 1950s to satisfy its desire for blues rock guitar and his own desire to go long and make noise. You can hear in the music, right, in the style of the music, the movement of the popular base of Chicago blues from a predominantly black, Southern, and working class audience to a predominantly white, Northern, and middle class audience with different ideas and expectations about art and about work and about how to tell a Chicago story in music. That brings us to how the music serves as the hook for the resale. It's not just that Legends, which is the name of Guy's club, hooks patrons with music so they can profit on the resale of drinks and food. That's standard operating procedure everywhere in music clubs. It's that the blues plays the hook for the resale of Chicago in general. The city markets itself as the home of the blues, which it began doing not during the blues golden age of the 50s, but when its heavy manufacturing sector began its final collapse in the 70s. The Big Blues Festival in June highlights a concentrated year-round push to market the blues as a quintessential Chicago experience to visitors and residents alike. Having moved downtown and to the north side, the blues business increasingly depends on and plays an increasingly large role in the city's increasingly important tourist economy. Add to that the vital importance of the culture business to attracting and retaining tax-paying property owners and money-spending renters. As Lois Weisberg, the mayor's long-serving commissioner for cultural affairs, said, "First you make a city interesting to its own people, then the visitors will come and look. The first thing everybody says is, 'Where are the blues?'" Chicago continues to mature as a post-industrial city that sells services and atmosphere, experiences, rather than locally manufactured goods or animal parts. And blues enjoys corresponding new importance in the packaging of Chicago-ness. As a synergistic means to sell dinners and hotel rooms and taxi rides and plane tickets and so on, the blues is a bow on the ribbon of the package that Chicago sells to tourists and suburbanites and its own residents. So blues as a music industry serves a niche market that certainly doesn't have the economic clout to generate the billions of dollars and scores of thousands of jobs that tourism brings to Chicago. But it's a hook for that much larger resale, partially screened from the bottom line by corporate decision-making, like that of the House of Blues, and by the intervention of governmental power in the form of the sustained marketing push by the mayor's office and by the state of Illinois. There's Buddy Guy on the cover of brochures inviting tourists to come to Chicago. There he is in American Way magazine, inviting air travelers to sample the essence of Chicago. And there's his name on the lips of the concierge at the Big Hilton on Michigan Avenue. If you want to see some real Chicago blues, Buddy Guy's Legends is just around the corner, and it's safe to walk. Now, this bargain is far from ideal, especially on aesthetic grounds. Guy, who happens to be a stone genius, may still play exciting music, but plenty of blues lovers complain that much of the music around town has stagnated because its audience will settle for any old bluesy-sounding thing, especially endless choruses of Sweet Home Chicago in the Blues Brothers style. There are other forms of state intervention that may well produce better music and a more sustainable blues community, like Blues in the Schools programs that recruit young musicians to the genre. And it's true beyond argument that the blues scene was far more alive, artistically and commercially, in the 1950s, when the state ignored or even suppressed it as an unruly ghetto practice. But the industrial blues order of the 50s was also unscreened from the bottom line and from the exercise of state power, and thus from the powerful forces that finally and dramatically unmade industrial Chicago in the 60s and 70s. Chicago's black metropolis was wrenched in 100 different directions by the transformation, and the industrial blues order, like a lot of its small business sector, didn't survive the upheaval. So what we have now may be something like blues under glass, right, a Potemkin village of the blues. But the patient is alive, right? And that's the nature of the compromise that we currently have to live with. So let's come back to Massachusetts for the next example. In a second, I want you to look at a trailer for The Fighter.